Welcome, traveler. Today, we drift into the quiet hum of a cell aboard a ship, so alien, it doesn't even try to be comfortable. The air is sterile, the walls shimmer faintly like the inside of a mollusk shell, and the only sound, aside from your own breathing, is the distant rhythmic clicking of language you'll never speak. Good news, you're just here for the story, not the radiation. The lighting is soft and purplish, pulsing like a heartbeat, though you're not entirely sure if it's the ship's or yours. The restraints are gone now. They stopped being necessary around day 3, once the guards realized something critical. You weren't trying to escape, and that's what broke them. They called you the prisoner, but that was just a title, a placeholder. What you really were, what you still are, is a psychological contagion they couldn't contain. It started with the smile. You remember it vividly. The first time one of them, a tall, chitin-armored being with a dozen blinking optical nodes, peered into the holding cell's observation port. It expected fear, pain, desperation. Instead, it found you lounging on the bench, legs crossed, grinning like a vacationer waiting for room service. You winked. That motion, a simple, deliberate compression of one eye, confused the creature. Its head tilted slightly. It clicked. Once. Twice. Then moved away without saying a word. They tried gas next. A hallucinogen designed to unravel cognition. You spent the next 6 hours laughing uncontrollably, tears streaming down your face as you whispered to yourself, "They really think this is worse than boot camp." The next morning, they cleaned the walls. Some galactic historians still argue whether that laughter was genuine or tactical. But does it matter? Either way, it got in their heads. They started scheduling more observers. Even the guards took turns, peeking in, expecting breakdown and witnessing, God forbid, someone enjoying captivity. And it wasn't defiance in the usual sense. You weren't shouting slogans or trying to rally imaginary allies. No, you were simply at ease. Like you'd seen worse and come out the other side with a story to tell and a slight coffee addiction. The real damage came when you started talking. Not to them. Not at them. Just to yourself, aloud. Musings, memories, jokes. You narrated your daily routines, gave each meal tray a new Michelin rating, and pretended the cleaning drone was your butler. One of them translated your monologue. That was mistake number 1. Day 22, you had said, while stretching, "And I'm still the most interesting thing on this ship. Do I get hazard pay for mental warfare?" They didn't know what hazard pay meant, but they felt something shift. Soon, the observers changed. Less armor, more scientists. They came with notepads, or whatever passed for notepads in this weird, tentacled bureaucracy, and studied you like a specimen. You began waving to them during meals. They started to reply. Then came the dream test. You didn't know it was happening at first. Just that you'd fall asleep and wake up more exhausted than before. It was like something was rummaging around in your head, without asking politely first. Turns out, it was psychic probes. A subtle form of interrogation meant to extract truth without breaking the subject. Normally effective, but not on you. Because instead of nightmares and strategic secrets, they found something much worse. Sitcom reruns. Childhood memories of backyard wrestling with your cousin. An entire monologue about the smell of fresh laundry and your grandmother's soup recipe. It left one of the probe techs in tears. She seasoned it with love. You'd whispered in your sleep. That's when the fears started, not from you, of course. You were having a blast. But them? They were beginning to understand what made you dangerous wasn't strength or tech or violence. It was resilience. And more than that, affection. You saw the commander once. Only once. Towering, plated, glistening in ritual war ink. It washed you from behind a force field for less than a minute. You smiled, held up a crumpled card you'd made from food wrappers, and said, "Happy Alien Leadership Day." It didn't flinch. It simply turned and left that TO this day. No one's sure if that being blinked or winced. But the guards changed. Rotations after that. New faces. More caution. That was the first fracture that a psychologist among them, something like a neural empath, began writing reports titled Cross-Species Paradox of Self-Humor. They circulated them internally. Within a week, your cell had fewer observers. Not because they were ignoring you, but because too many of them requested reassignment. The official reason? Subject exhibits cognitive patterns incompatible with mission clarity. Unofficially, You were making them feel things. And in a species bred for harmony, unity, and consensus, individual feeling was poison. They should have known better. They should have studied Earth longer. But then again, maybe they did. Maybe they just thought. They'd never need to understand the mind of a single, captured human soldier. And maybe that was their last mistake. You start noticing changes, not in yourself. You're still the same irreverent, mildly dehydrated, smart-mouthed soldier who once asked for a cappuccino during a combat drop. But in them, the aliens, the ones who used to watch you like a caged animal now watch you like a math problem that started whispering back. Today, there's no breakfast tray. Instead, there's a shape that IT hovers just beyond the transparent barrier of your cell, fluid, translucent, iridescent like gasoline on water. It pulses faintly with a rhythm you instinctively recognize as synthetic calm. A medical AI, maybe, or something closer to a priest that IT speaks, not in your language, not out loud, but through a pressure behind your eyes, like someone gently pushing ideas into your brain with velvet gloves that we mean no harm. This is for understanding that that's what it says, or something near enough to feel like meaning. You stretch, scratch your neck, and sit up slowly, your body language casual, like you're in a hotel room and not inside an alien psychological testing chamber. Okay, you say aloud. But if this is a therapy session, I want a lollipop. After they start the projection, you don't see it so much as feel it, as if your own memories are being rearranged and reassembled like furniture in someone else's living room. You're back at basic training. The mud, the shouting, the impossible obstacle course that seemed designed by someone who hated knees. But it's wrong. Subtle, but wrong. The mud isn't cold. The voices echo in a strange cadence. Your drill. Sergeant blinks the wrong number of times. The psychic reconstruction is incomplete. You grin and lean into it. Ah, you say, this must be the episode where I hallucinate Sergeant Kowalski into a poorly rendered jellyfish. Classic. The projection falters. A flicker, a ripple in the illusion, somewhere outside. The room, someone, or something records the anomaly. Your irreverence. Your refusal to play the role they assigned. Victim, specimen, subject. You hear a chime. Not from your cell, but through the walls. Maybe an alert. Maybe a question. The floating entity before you wavers, its light dimming slightly. This memory should evoke stress. You shrug. Sorry, I'm emotionally immune to that one. Had a stress inoculation. It came with the tetanus shot. Pause. The light flares. You are uncooperative. No, I'm just difficult to script. And there it is again. The thing they never understood. You're not resisting out of training or patriotism. You're doing it because the entire situation is absurd, and humans are masters at surviving the absurd by laughing at it. Some galactic scholars later theorized that this was humanity's true evolutionary advantage. Not strength, not intellect, but the ability to hold two conflicting truths at once and still function. War and empathy, humor and horror, despair and joy. We metabolize contradiction like oxygen. The projection shifts again. New scene. A childhood kitchen. Not yours, but someone's. Simulated. Designed to evoke nostalgia. A table. A warm plate. A parental figure turned away at the stove. You walk into it. You sit. The illusion waits for you to speak, to break, to mourn. Instead, you take the fork. Pancakes. You ask. Or is this the part where the food turns into symbolic worms to represent my subconscious guilt? The parental figure turns. The face is blank. Literally, just smooth skin. They missed a detail. You snort. Yeah. Real heartwarming. Try again, Spielberg. The projection drops entirely. The cell returns. Soft purples. Humming walls. And that smell of sterile uncertainty. The floating entity remains. But it doesn't. Pulse.now.it hovers. Watching. Processing. You do not react as others. No, you agree. But if you think I'm the weird one, you should meet my aunt. It leaves. You think, did I win? But it's not about winning. It's about making them doubt their model. They assumed trauma was universal. That memories, once twisted, would bind you. That fear was hard-coded. But they never accounted for one small detail. You grew up on a planet where some people watched horror movies to relax. You lean back on your bunk, arms behind your head, and whistle a tune. Nothing special. Just something from an old Earth sitcom. The kind with laugh tracks and bad lighting. The sound drifts into the quiet, and that's what breaks them, again. Because they don't understand why you're whistling, why you're not broken, why you smile in silence, and most importantly, why it's starting to spread. Later that cycle, one of the guards hesitates. Just a flicker, half a second of stillness. A glance through the transparent field. You lock eyes. The creature, once stoic and unreadable, now seems thoughtful, curious, maybe even amused. And then, without thinking, you wink, just like day one. And for the first time, it winks back, though with the wrong eye, at the wrong time, in the wrong rhythm. Still. Progress. You lie back and close your eyes. This is just the beginning. They think pain will do what memory couldn't, that it begins subtly. The meal tray tastes wrong, metallic and sharp, like someone fed the kitchen drone a philosophy textbook and a handful of nails. Your limbs feel heavy the next morning. Not sore, but weighted. Like gravity just remembered you owed it something. You open your eyes to a shift in the air. The lights are still soft, but colder now. The temperature drops by half a degree, just enough to feel like punishment. You sit up slowly, theatrically, and clap your hands once. Oh no, you whisper. The ambience is passive-aggressive. Terrifying. That's when the walls begin to hum, not the normal ship hum. This is deeper, more personal, like something vibrating through your bones. There's no drill instructor yelling, no flashing lights, just a rhythmic, rising pressure that makes your molars buzz. And then you hear the door, not the one to your cell, the other one. The one they pretend isn't there, hidden behind refractive camo and subtle seams. It opens without sound, and in steps something you haven't seen before, tall. Too tall. Its frame doesn't walk so much as shift, like liquid bones wrapped in mirrored skin. You try not to laugh, but it looks like a yoga ball trying to cosplay as a weapon. You cough politely. Let me guess. Interrogation room B? Or is this extreme? Spot it. The thing doesn't answer. Of course it doesn't. It just moves toward you and emits a frequency, a high-pitched whine, layered with pulsing subsonics. It's probably designed to induce stress, anxiety, collapse. You sneeze, the whine increases. Your nose twitches again. They really spent millions of credits just to simulate hay fever, you mutter. Outstanding military budget priorities. But then it touches you, just 2 fingertips, pressing lightly to your forehead. You expect heat, pain, fireworks in your synapses. Instead, you giggle because the sensation is, there's no better word for it, ticklish, and it wasn't supposed to be. Asterisk. The creature recoils. Its mirrored skin flickers. Something about your reaction was outside protocol. You watch its limbs pause in mid-motion, like a computer freezing mid-update. Well, that was awkward for both of us. You say. It tries again, this time with images, projected onto the inner surface of your mind, like static dreams bursting through faulty antennae. Flashes of battlefields, ruins, civilian screams, some human, some alien. Flashbang memories meant to trigger regret, guilt, shame. They want to see your soul recoil. Instead, you analyze the editing. Oh, you cut this clip out of sequence, you say aloud. This explosion happens after we evac the civilians. Nice try, though. The projection shudders. It resets. This time it's your face, screaming, wounded, begging, but the voice is wrong. The inflection too neat. It's clean pain, synthetic. Pain, a corporate-sponsored emotional trigger. You shake your head. Who wrote this? It's giving after-school special vibes. The interrogator withdraws again, not out of mercy, out of confusion. It doesn't understand why this isn't working. Why none of this is working. You're supposed to crack. Humans are supposed to crack. Their records say so. Their studies. Their war simulations. But you're not following the script, because the script doesn't account for the fact that you've already cracked, years ago, on some forgotten outpost, in a foxhole filled with mud and fire and the smell of your own burning fear. And you came out the other side with your sanity stapled together by caffeine, inside jokes, and spite. That kind of broken doesn't break again. Some galactic psychologists theorize that humans suffer from resilient delusionism, the ability to convince themselves they're okay even when they're not, and weaponize that against any form of control. Others say it's just humor. You say it's survival with style. As the creature backs out, a faint voice, real this time, comes over the intercom. Dry, slightly static touched. but unmistakably confused. Begin behavioral quarantine protocol. The subject is influencing containment staff. You lie back, hands behind your head, and grin. You hadn't even started talking yet. The next day, the meals improve. Slightly. There's a chocolate-like square wrapped in synthetic foil. It's probably a bribe. Or a test. You eat it, dramatically. You're learning. You tell the empty air. Positive reinforcement. Classic Pavlov. I'm proud of you. Later that night. If it is night, because who knows in this floating. Funhouse. The cleaning drone passes by again. But this time, it hesitates and drops a small object through the force field. A cube. You examine it. It hums faintly, like a portable storage drive or a music box. You flip it over, press the only button. A single human voice plays. Yours, laughing. From day 3, they're studying your laugh, recording it, playing it back, trying to understand how it functions, how it's structured, whether it's a signal, a code. They're right. In a way, it is a weapon. You chuckle again, and the sound echoes through the cell like the start of a war no one trained for. The first time they try to breach your subconscious, it's almost flattering. You're asleep. Or at least, in the light doze that passes for rest on a ship where gravity hums like an irritated bass line and the walls smell faintly of ultraviolet antiseptic. One moment you're dreaming about a noodle shop in Osaka. The next, everything shifts. You're inside a simulation again. But this time, it doesn't pretend to be real. It's too vivid, too sharp-edged. The details are exaggerated. The colors, impossibly saturated. Trees that glow faintly at the edges. Grass that whispers in languages you don't speak. Skies with 2 suns. And in the middle of all that, a small house. You walk toward it. Of course you do. This is clearly some kind of constructed memory. Probably one they harvested from a field report or a psychological profile. You're lucid. Awake inside the dream. The door opens before you. Touch it, and there it is. On the inside wall, hung with casual reverence. A child's drawing. Crayon lines. Paper too thin. The kind of thing you'd find taped to the fridge in any household across Earth. But here, on this alien simulated memory stage, it shouldn't be there. You walk closer. It's drawn in unmistakably human style. Thick blue scribbles. For sky, lopsided yellow blob for sun. A smiling stick figure next to a boxy house. One corner has peeled slightly, revealing tape made from something not quite plastic. You remember drawing it. Or do you? That's the trick. The drawing doesn't belong to any real moment of your life, but it feels like it could. A memory. Inserted by you, maybe years ago. A placeholder emotion. Comfort made tangible. You touch it gently. The simulation wavers. Somewhere, someone watching panics. You know this because the colors glitch. The ground beneath you flickers. One of the twin suns freezes mid-motion. And then a voice. Not spoken. Not transmitted. Implanted. Show us what it means. You blink. Laughter bubbles up before you. Can stop it. You really don't know, do you? The simulation shifts. They expect you to comply. To translate. To unwrap the metaphor. But instead, you just sit down cross-legged in the grass and stare at the drawing, letting the silence stretch. Eventually, a new element appears. A faceless figure, tall, insectoid, not hostile, but somehow reverent, joins you in the grass. It points at the drawing. The small unit. Is it progeny? You nod slowly. Sure. Or it's me. Or it's someone I lost. It doesn't really matter, does it? It must have function. Emotional anchoring. You raise an eyebrow. Nope. It just is. That's the point. And that is what they cannot process. They want input and output. Cause and effect. A clean equation. But the drawing is chaos wrapped in warmth. It's irrational, sentimental, messy, and deeply, deeply human. You watch the figure retreat. Not flee. Retreat. There's a difference. This wasn't a failure of interrogation. It was a revelation. You didn't just resist the probe. You redirected it. Some xenoanthropologist is probably writing a frantic report right now. Title: Subject introduces nonlinear sentimental constructs into predictive emotional models. The next morning, your cell is different. Subtle things. The light is warmer. The hum of the ventilation is tuned slightly lower, like a sigh instead of a hiss. The food comes with something resembling flavor. And on the tray, placed carefully, is the drawing, not a copy. The same one. You smile. You do care. Some historians still argue whether that moment was calculated on your part, whether placing the drawing in your own dream was a trap, a form of psycho-cyber sabotage. But the truth is simpler. You just missed something familiar, and they found out that what humans cling to most isn't power or logic or victory, that it's meaning, even. Meaningless things, like crayon suns and impossible childhoods. You carry them in the back pocket of your soul, just in case someone tries to empty your mind and forgets to check the lining. Later that cycle, a new observer arrives. This one doesn't wear armor. No weapons. Just stands behind the transparent barrier and watches you with curiosity. You wave. The universal human greeting for, yes, I know you're studying me like I'm a haunted toaster. They don't wave back, but they stay longer than any others. That night, you dream again. Same field. Same house. Only this time, the figure is already sitting beside the drawing. Waiting. You sit too, and neither of you says a word. You notice it first in the timing. The guard rotation changes, slightly off pattern. Where they used to walk past in threes, silent and uniform, now it's twos. One pauses longer than the other. A glance. A hesitation. You don't say anything, but you feel it that someone's curiosity is slipping through the cracks. They've tried everything at this point. Psychic projections, sensory deprivation, emotional reconstruction. The latest attempt involved a hologram of your childhood dog, but with human eyes. You almost screamed. Almost. Instead, you named it Greg and asked if he could do tricks. But now they're just watching. You sit on your bunk, legs dangling, and hum a tune you know they haven't cataloged. It's not military, not historical. It's from a Forgotten Earth ad for toothpaste. You hum it because it's meaningless. And that's what drives them crazy. Or rather, curious. One of the guards, same one from yesterday, you think, lingers at the corner of the hallway. Doesn't move when you catch their gaze. You nod once, slow, and they nod back, just once, tiny, barely perceptible, but it's enough. Later, they send in a different kind of entity, not a soldier, not a scientist, something closer to a diplomat. If diplomats were grown in tanks and encoded with psychological firewalls, this one speaks aloud. Do you wish to discuss terms of release? You stretch, crack your neck. No pause. The diplomat blinks the wrong way. Eyelid folds closing outward. No. It repeats, genuinely puzzled. No. You say, because I'm not negotiating. I'm talking. There's a difference. The being processes that. Visibly. It tilts its head, the way dogs do when trying to understand a vacuum cleaner. What would you prefer to talk about? It asks. You think for a second. Then grin. Okay. So here's this thing we have back home. Called a dad joke. You launch into it. Nothing graphic. Nothing threatening. Just classic, grown-worthy wordplay. It takes a few minutes. The punchline lands. Silence. Then, the diplomat twitches, not violently. Just a momentary spasm, like a shiver in its neural sheath. Was that humor? It asks slowly. Oh, it will be, you reply. Give it 12 hours, and someone's going to laugh about it in a maintenance closet. You weren't wrong. The joke spreads. You don't know how, but 2 cycles later, the cleaning drone plays it back through its audio port. Another day, a food tray arrives with the words, nice try, human, scratched faintly into the side. You've seeded something, not rebellion, not ideology, curiosity that's contagious. Some historians argue this was the true turning point. Not a dramatic prison break, not a grand philosophical debate, but a pun. The moment they laughed at something they didn't fully understand and wanted to point. One of the junior officers makes a mistake. They forget to mute the observation channel during a shift change. You hear them whispering, not about defenses, not about tactics, about you. They're not what I expected. They're strange, but in a way that makes sense. Somehow, the voice is young, uncertain, not yet reshaped by the cold symmetry of their command. Another responds, lower. It's a trap, an emotional virus. A pause, but it makes me feel clearer, like I can hear myself better. You smile, and you know that that's it. That's the moment. Somewhere in their ranks, a mind cracks open, not from pressure, but from possibility. Not because you broke their will, but because you offered them yours. Later, that same officer, you're sure it's the same one, approaches your cell without authorization. No guards, no clearance badges, just walking. She, or at least you decide it's a she, stares at you through the barrier. You raise an eyebrow. You lost. She doesn't blink, doesn't move. But when she speaks, her voice is quiet, not transmitting across some official channel, just speaking to you. Why aren't you afraid? You pause, not for effect, but because you realize no one's asked that yet. I am, you say finally. All the time. But I carry it differently. She tilts her head. How? You shrug. Same way I carry everything. With jokes and stubbornness, and remembering that I don't have to understand everything to survive it. She doesn't speak again, but she leaves you a gift, small, metal, a cube with a human letter H engraved on one side. You don't know what it does, but it hums when you hold it. You wake up to silence, not the normal kind. Not the dull ambient thrum of alien technology or the soft hissing of recycled air. This is intentional silence, the kind engineered by a species that believes sensory deprivation equals control. But you're not deprived that you're anticipating, because something's coming. You feel it like gravity about to shift. A storm building behind smiles and circuits. Then the lights flicker once, and it begins with a joke. You didn't tell this one. It's told to you. It plays over the speaker, crackling, hesitant, and in imperfect English. How do humans defeat entropy? Pause. By pretending Mondays are real. You laugh. Loud, surprised, delighted. You sit up, clap your hands once, and look at the camera embedded in the wall. Whoever said that? Promotion. Immediate. Give them a cape. Somewhere, everywhere, someone's watching, and the joke spreads. You don't know how it started. Maybe the young officer who left the humming cube whispered it to a technician. Maybe it was written on a bathroom stall in alien glyphs that no longer hold meaning. Doesn't matter. What matters is that the joke keeps going. You hear it again 2 cycles later, this time garbled into a translation drone startup sequence, by the 4th time. It's evolved. Why do humans keep existing? Because hope has no off switch. It's not even funny anymore. But that's not the point. They're not laughing at the punchlines. They're laughing because they can. That's the infection. You're not breaking their systems. You're rewiring their expectations. See, in their culture, jokes are anomalies. Accidents. Laughter is a mechanical error. It's supposed to be purged, flagged as instability. But now they chase it. The engineers isolate your original quip, something you said absent-mindedly weeks ago while scratching your elbow. Maybe the universe is broken. That's why we fit in. They play it on loop in a testing lab. Some alien researchers stare at it for 3 hours, then file for emotional recovery, leave. Point 1 scientist, high-ranking, crystalline skull plate, gleaming authority, requests a transfer to a human contact unit. She calls your worldview philosophical dark matter. Her report ends with a line that becomes legend. The human sees tragedy and smiles. Not because it doesn't hurt, but because someone has to smile first. And that's when the leadership starts to panic. They summon an emergency conclave. A full-stack command cast assembly. Triangular seats, pulsing decision cores, biological data slates interfaced directly into their spinal trunks. The first item on the agenda: how does a joke destabilize a command structure? No one has an answer. The problem is layered. First, the officers who heard the jokes can't forget them. They're not neural viruses, they're mental seeds. They grow quietly. They itch behind the eyes. Second, those who haven't heard them start to feel left out. They demand exposure. For analysis, they say. For study. But the truth is, they want to laugh, too. And third, worst of all, some have started making their OWN.AT first, their nonsense. Stiff attempts at mimicry. Why do humans paint eggs during reproductive festival? To prevent orbital decay. But they're trying. And that's when containment fails. Because the species you're dealing with, so united, so orderly, was never designed to fracture inward. But laughter is inherently disruptive. It bends the hierarchy. It levels commanders and janitors. It defies protocol. It invites intimacy where distance was mandatory. You didn't weaponize jokes. You just shared them. And that's all it took. One night, you hear footsteps outside your cell, different pace. Softer. Not military. A face appears at the force field. Young. Smooth. Layered with the same glow you've come to associate with the curious ones. He holds something up. A crude drawing. Stick figures. A triangle sun. A blob that might be a dog. And beneath it, the word US. You nod. He doesn't say anything. He doesn't have to. You tap the glass. Then your heart. Then your temple. He mimics the motion. Later, a tray arrives. No food. Just a single strip of cloth, navy blue, folded perfectly. A joke. If you squint, it's the same color as your old uniform. Some historians would later argue whether the spread of humor among the enemy was intentional on your part. Others say you were just being human. And really, that's worse, because it means anyone could have done it, but only you did. You wake to Earth, not literally, of course. If they'd actually returned you home, there'd be parades and debriefings, and at least 2 suspiciously long medical scans. No, this is their simulation again. But this time, it's almost too perfect. The smell of summer asphalt after rain, the screech of a bicycle tire on gravel, distant lawnmowers, birds that never shut up, the subtle hum of power lines stretching down a cul-de-sac you almost recognize, and ahead of you, a porch swing, wooden, creaky, gently swaying in wind that doesn't quite feel like wind. You're barefoot. You step forward, planting each foot carefully, testing reality. This isn't like their last dreamscape. There's detail here, texture, emotion. They've learned. They think this one will get to you. You step onto the porch. The swing beckons. A cold glass of something that might be lemonade sits on the railing, condensation perfect. You sit, wrap your hand around the glass, and sigh. Then you say, out loud, "This is the worst attempt at manipulation I've ever seen." The sky flickers, just once. Somewhere, the simulation engine twitches. Maybe someone panics. Maybe a scientist spits out their equivalent of coffee. But you just take a sip. It tastes like lemons, sugar, and nostalgia poisoning. You don't understand Earth. You murmur into the false air. You understand the image of it, not the soul. A soft tone pulses in the air. We believed you would respond positively to home. You laugh. Oh, I am responding. I'm just doing it sarcastically. The simulation shifts. The porch vanishes. Now you're on a beach. Sunset. The golden hour hits just right. You can feel the salt in the air, feel the heat of the sand under your toes. A distant voice says, "Is this accurate?" You shake your head slowly. You're missing the chaos. There's no child screaming because their ice cream fell. No seagull trying to steal someone's sandwich. No unexpected existential dread because Mondays still exist. A pause. You find beauty in imperfection. You turn toward the sun. It's not quite right. The wrong size. The wrong warmth. But the effort is there. We don't find beauty. You say, we choose it, even when it makes no sense. You sit down in the sand. Some galactic scholars still debate this section of your captivity, the infamous simulated Earth incident. They argue about intent. Was it bait? A peace offering? A psychological minefield? But most agree it was a test, to see what it would take to break your composure. Not with pain, but with longing, and it backfired spectacularly, because instead of despair, you asked for popcorn. The simulation paused for almost an hour after that. Then, a bag of something vaguely resembling popcorn materialized beside you. You ate it, loudly. "I give it a 5 out of 10, you announced. "Needs more butter and a reason to exist." Then you leaned back in the sand and began narrating your own fake movie trailer in a deep voice, in a world where nothing was real. One soldier refused to play along. Coming this summer, existential snack time. Rated R4 rude to aliens. Somewhere, the observers logged the moment as unpredictable behavioral defiance, comedic variant. But the real shift? It came 2 cycles later, when one of the projection engineers, someone deep in the command cast, high clearance, respected, requested access to the simulated Earth again. Not for study, for vacation. You don't find out until later, but apparently. He sat on that same beach for 3 hours, watching a fake sun over a fake ocean, and for the first time in his long, sterile life, relaxed, because the illusion they created for you wasn't a trap. The IT was a gift they didn't realize they needed. And once the simulation spread across the ranks, you could feel it in the ship itself. The halls grew quieter. The guards stopped standing so rigidly. Point one even whistled. A poor attempt, yes, but undeniably attuned. The change was slow, subtle, but irreversible. They gave you home, and in return, you gave them longing, the most human disease of all. It begins with a meeting. You can't see it, but you feel its effects ripple through the walls, like a vibration your body picks up before your brain understands why. Something's wrong in the rhythm of the ship today. Less precision, more silence, command, has fractured that you're the reason. Somewhere beyond your cell, beyond the smooth metallic hallways and antiseptic hum, alien high command is having a very uncomfortable conversation about you that you're not a threat in the traditional sense. No weapons, no demands, no subterfuge. You haven't escaped, haven't even raised your voice. All you've done is talk, joke, exist, and somehow, that's worse. The analysts are panicking. One side of their cast, logical, methodical, uniform, demands immediate termination, dissection if necessary. You're a mimetic hazard, they argue, a walking pattern of emotional destabilization. But the other side, curious, empathic, newly infected with laughter, wants to understand you. To preserve you. Because, as one junior researcher famously asks during the conclave, if we destroy what we don't understand, do we become the enemy we feared them to be? The silence that followed that question was 3 hours long, and you just sit in your cell, eating your not-quite popcorn, occasionally humming the chorus to a song from Earth that absolutely no one here will ever recognize. That you're patient. You can feel the cracks spreading. Not in the walls, not in the structure. In the order. That night, you get proof. A slip of paper, not a data pad, not a neural ping, not a hologram. An actual slip of rough, human-made paper slides under the force field. A pencil sketch. An alien face, angular, spined, and familiar, smiling. On the bottom, a caption. I tried. You grin. Not because it's well drawn, it's not, but because it means someone somewhere on this ship sat alone with a pencil and tried to recreate a facial expression their species never evolved. That's effort. That's rebellion in its most beautiful form. Attempted empathy. And that scares the hell out of their leadership. The next day, the lights don't turn on. You sit in shadow. It's not technical failure. It's a message. A subtle flex. They want you to feel vulnerable, small, off balance. But jokes are adaptive. You call into the darkness. Okay, fine, dramatic lighting. Am I supposed to give a monologue now? Because I can do that. I will do that. No response. So you begin, theatrically. Is this the part where I'm supposed to regret everything? Because I really only regret not sneaking extra snacks into my capture pod. Oh, and trusting Corporal Jensen with the playlist on our last deployment. Big mistake. No laugh track. Just humming machinery. Still, you keep going, because you know they're listening, because they have to listen now. You're the only variable they can't quantify. The only noise in their perfect math. Some historians would later call this the tension spiral. Inside that conclave, every action they considered, drugging you, isolating you further, staging a false rescue, was met with fierce internal debate, because by now, too many of them had changed, too many had felt, and once you feel, control stops being clean. It becomes complicated, messy, human. You taught them that, without a sermon, without violence, with nothing but a refusal to break the way they expected. In fact, you remember that night vividly, because the force field fizzled, not broke, just deactivated. You didn't move, you just stared at the opening, tilted your head, and said, if this is a trap, I hope someone's recording. I'd like to watch it later with popcorn. But nothing came. No guards. No alarms, just the soft invitation of freedom, and that's when you knew they didn't know what to do with you anymore. Because in trying to understand you, they'd fractured their own unity, split across emotional lines. And worse, they'd started asking questions. Open-ended ones, the kind that don't have answers, the kind you live in. They never expected a defector, not from among their own. Their species was bred for cohesion, designed, literally grown, to operate in ranks and resonance. Orders were not followed. They were felt, transferred through biotelepathic consensus. Networks. Emotion was distributed. Thought synchronized. Individual will? A myth. A relic of lesser species. Until now. Until IT starts quietly, as these things always do. The defector doesn't declare themselves with drama or noise. No escape pod. No weapon in hand. Just a knock. 3 soft taps. On the outer access panel of your containment corridor. You freeze. That's new. The panel slides open, and there they stand. Young, angular, shimmering slightly with stress pheromones that you've come to recognize as something between, I have made a mistake, and I am about to change my entire worldview. No armored NO translator unit. Just them. I want to talk. They say in fractured English, the consonants barely surviving their mouth anatomy. You. Blink. I'd offer tea, but the replicator only does salt bricks. They step inside. The force field doesn't activate. That's your second clue. The defector sits across from you. Awkwardly, like someone trying to copy a posture they read about but never practiced. Their long limbs fold up into a loose approximation of cross-legged. I have questions, they say. You and everyone else. They pause. Do you always feel this way? You tilt your head. Define this way. The humor. The uncertainty. The contradictions. You lean back, hands behind your head. Not always. Sometimes we cry. Sometimes we break things. Sometimes we break ourselves. But yeah, the contradictions? That's kind of the whole package. They shiver. I heard your laugh, they say quietly. And I felt something like hunger. You nod. That tracks. Laughter is a hunger sometimes. Or medicine. Or camouflage. Depends on the day. They go silent for a while. Then, I can't hear the chorus anymore. You sit up at that. The chorus? You ask. They tap their head lightly. The network. The shared mind. I disconnected. It was not intentional. But I laughed, and then I couldn't rejoin. You exhale that's a big deal. Bigger than they realize. Some galactic historians claim this moment was the first documented mimetic exile, a case where humor severed a neural network. You just see a person, scared, alone. You offer a weak smile. Yeah, it'll do that to you. Humor makes you aware. You can't go back to pretending everything makes sense after that. The defector swallows, or at least mimics the gesture. I thought clarity would bring peace. You nod. And I'm terrified. They whisper. You don't comfort them. Not directly. Instead, you say the most honest thing you can. Welcome to being human. Later, the guards come, not to drag them away, but to stand outside, uncertain. They don't enter. Don't raise weapons. They just watch. Two of them argue in clipped pulses of light across their helmets. One turns away, suddenly trembling that you've never seen that before. And inside your cell, the defector curls into the corner, hands wrapped around their knees. They whisper, "What do I do now?" You answer softly, so only they can hear. Start. Where we all start. With confusion. Then maybe, if you're lucky, find meaning. You hand them the old paper drawing, the crayon sun, the stick figure, the lopsided house. They hold it like it's sacred, because it is, for the first time in the history of their species. One of them holds something meaningless and chooses not to destroy it. Somewhere far from here, an admiral rips up a report in frustration, because once one of them defects, the rest begin to wonder. They say empathy was their greatest design, elegant, efficient, entire populations linked through pulse thought and emotional resonance, decisions made in synchronized clarity. No one left behind, because no one was ever alone. Their entire civilization moved like a single organism. But what they didn't realize, what you've come to understand far too well, is that empathy cuts both ways. You didn't attack them. You never even raised your voice. You just felt. And then they felt it. 2.it starts with the defector, still curled on your bunk, still clutching that crude human drawing like it's a beacon in a fog. You speak softly, stories, mostly. Small ones. The kind you tell children before sleep. You don't explain every part. You shouldn't. Let them wonder. Let their mind reach. But your voice? Your voice carries. Because they're listening, not just outside the cell. Everywhere. You suspected it for days now. That your words, your moods, were leaking. Echoing along their biopsychic lattice. The network they thought unbreakable was never built for containment. It was built for transmission, and now it's transmitting you. The humor. The warmth. The stubborn belief in beauty for its own sake. The defiant grin when things go wrong. The irrational hope that humanity never seems to run out of .it spreads like a rumor in a quiet church. .it first, they try to contain it. Command isolates the infected. Assigns them meditation rituals. Full sensory realignment. But it's too late. One by one, officers report misalignment. Technicians start drawing things in the margins of their interface slates. Little cartoons, tiny jokes, fragments of dreams. Entire work groups begin requesting irregular sleep cycles, not for efficiency, but for something they describe as necessary internal silence. That's not protocol, that's introspection. You hear the whispers as they pass your door, not words. Feelings. Fragments of emotion flickering through the neural web like the static before a thunderstorm. Point one technician breaks down sobbing in a hallway. Not out of fear, out of relief, she says, translated awkwardly through her helmet. I dreamed alone. And I liked it. It should terrify them, and it does. But it also frees them. They were never meant to feel separately. Never meant to wonder why they obeyed or questioned what came next. But now, scattered across this great ship, pockets of them begin doing exactly that. Not many, just enough. The chorus, the shared mind, starts to flicker. The harmonics grow unstable. Disruptive feedback loops ripple outward like sonar through glass. Some units drop offline mid-sentence. Others pause in confusion, unsure whether the voice they hear in their head is their own or yours. Command panics. New protocols are issued. They call it empathic firewalling. Direct connection to the infected nodes is restricted. Conversation logs are scrubbed. Memories flagged and sequestered. But it doesn't matter, because you said one thing, one quiet phrase, to the defector 2 cycles ago, and it reached them all. It's okay to feel something you can't explain. That was it. The virus wasn't you. It wasn't language. It wasn't laughter. It was permission. And in a society where every emotion is cataloged and cleansed, permission to feel irrationally is an act of revolution. You lie awake that night, hands folded behind your head, watching the glow of the force field slowly pulse. The defector sleeps quietly beside the wall now, nervous, unsure, but unafraid. And somewhere far above, 2 warships break formation. No orders, no signals. They just drift for hours, refusing to return to pattern. Some historians still argue about this moment. Some call it the contagion of solitude. Others name it the human loop. A recursive failure state of logic triggered by irrational behavior. But you call it progress. You whisper a joke into the dark, just one word, boo. And somewhere, through an interlinked web of millions, someone laughs. Not because they're supposed to, but because they want to. The chorus disconnects. It doesn't crash. It doesn't explode. It simply decides not to be. Point one moment. The ship hums in perfect harmony. Systems align. Breaths synchronize. You can practically feel the unity vibrating in the walls like a deep chord. And then, silence. Real silence. Not imposed. Chosen. You sit upright, immediately aware of the shift. The air changes, like the ship took a breath and forgot to exhale. You don't know the full architecture of their empathic link, but you know this. You were inside it, even if only at the edges. And now it's gone. No more whispers behind your dreams. No more secondhand giggles or stolen fragments of wonder from some distant technician. It's just you. In them, scattered, fractured, alone. The chorus, once a flawless net of shared thought, has been pulled like taffy across too many minds. Infected with you. So they shut it down, voluntarily. Emergency protocol. Damage control. 1,000 ships full of individuals suddenly forced to be individuals. And that's a kind of warfare they never trained for. The first signs are physical. Missed steps. Long stairs. Officers walking into the wrong rooms and forgetting why they came. Technicians requesting fewer hours, not because they're tired, but because they're thinking about things that don't have answers. Then come the messages, small, fragmented, scrawled into food trays, scratched into sleep chamber walls, passed along on folded paper, copied in languages no one speaks out loud. Does anyone else feel this weight? How did the humans function like this all the time? I dreamed I was a child. I don't remember if I ever was. They're unraveling, not chaotically, not violently, but quietly. The kind of unraveling that happens when a mind starts asking why, and the silence answers back. You remember something from training. Something your psychology officer once told you on a long march during a storm. Solitude is survivable, but sudden solitude? That'll cave a brain in sideways. And now it's happening, system by system, mind by mind. There are rumors of officers refusing commands, not out of rebellion, but because they wanted to decide first. That idea alone is catastrophic to their order. Some begin forming subgroups. Emotional alliances based not on caste, but on feeling. Groups who found your presence comforting. Others who fear what it made them think. They call these new factions by names in their own tongue, most untranslatable, but one name sticks: those who drifted. Because that's what it feels like a massive ship slowly turning away from the gravitational pull of its own ideology. You see the consequences firsthand. Your meals stop arriving at the same time. Some guards disappear entirely. One day, no one passes by for 12 hours, and then the lights flicker on, not overhead. Inside your cell, the force field's gone. You stand slowly. Step out. No alarms. No barriers. Just a hallway bathed in pale blue light, the far end, a door you've never seen before, open, waiting, and behind it, an observation deck, massive, curved, one full wall of transparent shielding. The galaxy spread out before you like spilled jewels across black velvet. And in the middle of the room, them, dozens of them, sitting, standing, cross-legged, curled, some holding tablets, others just staring at you with something too fractured to be fear and too raw to be reverence. The defector stands beside you now, quiet as starlight. You walk forward together, and one stops you. They part, slowly. A circle forming. You in the middle. You look up at the stars, then down at them. You speak softly. "I don't know why you brought me here." One of them answers, almost trembling. "Because we wanted to ask you." "How do you do it?" You pause. "Do what?" "This." They gesture around, to the room, to themselves. Feel alone, and still keep moving. You take a breath, look out at the stars, and say, quietly, "We're never really alone. Not if we carry each other." They don't understand it fully, but they want it out. That's enough. Your cell is empty, not just unoccupied, abandoned. The medical monitors? Offline. The food dispenser? Cold. The observation lens that once blinked and whirred at your every twitch? Dark, like an eye that finally gave up blinking. But it's not a malfunction, that it's an invitation. You wandered, and alarms. No resistance. Just soft, blue-lit corridors and the echo of your own bare footsteps against foreign alloys. For the first time since your capture, you're moving freely, and it feels surreal. Like waking up mid-dream and not being sure what part is real. You pass an open door, engineering, maybe. Inside, two figures sit cross-legged on the floor, quietly whispering to one another. One holds a sketch pad, the other's eyes glisten, not with fear, but something softer. Wonder, maybe. Or confusion that's grown too tired to wear its armor. They don't stop you. They nod. You nod back. Eventually, you reach the central nexus, the bridge, or something like it. It's not what you expect. No grand command chairs or glowing alien HUDs. Just a wide room, still and quiet. Everything minimal. No drama. No throne. Just a chessboard. Dead center. A human one. Your old one. You stare, blinking. It's your board. The one you made from repurposed food containers and pieces of broken cleaning drones. The rook still has a bite mark. You never found out who did that. Maybe you. Maybe Greg, the hallucinated dog from Simulation 3. You step forward, there's a single move missing. White bishop. 3 squares left. You always left it hanging, just to mess with the analyst who tried to decode your strategy. Now the piece is placed. Not by you. Check. You sit. Somewhere, you hear footsteps. He appears. The interrogator. The same one from the beginning. The one who touched your forehead and recoiled when you laughed. But this time, no suit. No probes. No glowing fingers. Just him. Hands folded behind his back. Expression unreadable. "You left your board unfinished," he says. You nod slowly. "I was waiting for you to catch up." He doesn't sit, but he kneels beside the board, studying it. Not like a commander observing a threat, but like a student observing an artifact. "I've studied your moves," he says. "They were never efficient." "Exactly," you say. "Efficiency isn't the only game." He looks up. "I believe. I understand that now." You tilt your head. "That's dangerous." He actually smiles. A twitch at the edge of an expression. He likely had to invent for this conversation. Many of us have begun inventing things lately. He turns the board slowly, looking at it from your side. And then he says something you never expected. "I told your story." You blink. "What?" He doesn't elaborate immediately. Instead, he rises, turns away, folds his arms behind his back, and speaks into the vastness of the bridge. "There are those among us who still fear what you've done, what you are. They call it contagion. Anomalous psychology. But others? We listen to your voice, your jokes, the silence between your words, and we feel resonance. You stand now, too. Resonance is risky. You say that he nods. That's why I broadcast your story. Not to all, just to those who asked. The ones who started dreaming in language. They didn't understand. You close your eyes for a moment. Somewhere, hundreds of them, maybe more, have heard your words. Not commands, not rhetoric, just you. And now, they carry it with them. The interrogator? No, not that anymore. He never introduces himself, but he doesn't have to. He's changed that he walks beside you toward the glass wall at the front of the bridge. Together, you stare at the stars. Do you still think I'm a threat? You ask that he shakes his head slowly. No, I think you're a mirror. You let that sit in the silence. After a while, you whisper, so what happens now? His gaze doesn't waver. We don't know. You look back at the chessboard. The final move. The quiet message. And you understand. This isn't surrender, that it's acceptance. They didn't lose a war. They gained a question they can't stop asking. You're not supposed to be here anymore. That's the general feeling that follows you now. Through every corridor. Past every console. Along the strange stillness of this ship that once studied you like a virus in a jar. You're no longer the prisoner. You're something else, a variable they can't delete, a ghost that talks back. The interrogator, the one who told your story, doesn't return the next day. Instead, a different figure appears outside your old cell. An elder, not in age, time, doesn't leave wrinkles on their kind, but in posture. Slow, deliberate. A creature used to being listened to. They don't speak immediately. Just stare at the now vacant room as if looking into the scene of a holy event. You lived here. They say that it's not a question, but you nod anyway. For a while, you reply. Then I outgrew it. They blink once, then twice. So did we. You walk with them, down through the levels of the vessel you've never been allowed to see before. Not with guards. Not with scanners. Just with them. You pass through a library, if you can call it that. Not books, but memory spheres. Data coils. A history of thoughts stored in pure experience. The alien gestures toward a console. Point one sphere glows faintly. This one contains your story. They say. You reach out, but hesitate. You recorded. Everything. They nod. More than that. We felt it. And some of us still do. You pick up the sphere. It hums against your skin. Warm. Alive. Why share it? You ask. Wouldn't it be easier to erase me? They don't answer. Right away. Then, because your story has begun to replace ours. That sinks in. Deep. You sit down. Not dramatically, just tired. That's not what I wanted, you say. But it's what happened. You roll the sphere between your palms. You can feel the moments inside it. Your memories, your laughs, even your silences, they're all there. Replayed, rethought, re-experienced by minds not built to hold them. It's rewiring them. And they know it. You whisper, you don't have to become us. The elder kneels across from you. For a moment, the two of you look more like students than diplomats. We know, they say, but we cannot unsee you. We cannot unfeel you. And so, we are becoming something else. In the next cycle, they begin broadcasting, not propaganda, not orders, stories, your stories, edited, interpreted, fragmented and retold through 1,000 filters. One turns your chessboard into a symbol of spiritual awakening. Another adapts your joke about popcorn into a parable about existential readiness. Your sarcasm becomes scripture. You didn't ask for this, but it's happening anyway. Somewhere. One of their ships builds a room designed to replicate your cell. Not to imprison, but to remember. A new generation of their young visit it like a shrine, hoping to catch a piece of what made the human variable so enduring. And the interrogator, who once touched your mind like it was a wound, now lectures others on the essential uncertainty of the solitary mind. Meanwhile, you sit quietly on a deck chair pulled from who knows where, sipping something approximating coffee, watching the stars. Your story is no longer yours. And yet, it is, because they don't copy it perfectly. They misinterpret it, they distort it, and in doing so, they make it their own. Later that cycle, a child, if you can call it that, approaches you in the corridor. Small, soft-voiced, still pulsing, with connection to the chorus, but newly born into a world where that chorus questions itself. She stares up at you, shimmering eyes wide. Were you scared? She asks. You look down. Think for a moment. Then kneel beside her. Yes, you say. But I never let it speak for me. She nods, like she understands. Maybe she does. Then she offers you something. A stick figure, drawn in wax crayon on fake. Parchment. A sun overhead. A figure standing under it. But this time, not alone. You smile. Thank you. You whisper, because for the first time, you realize you aren't. Peace talks begin quietly, not with declarations or banners or those ceremonial translations that always sound worse in every language. No, it starts with a question whispered across encrypted relays, slipping through quantum lattice like a rumor with coordinates. What if we spoke to them, instead of about them? You're not in the room when it begins. But the room wouldn't exist if not for you. That's the strange part. You're not part of the negotiation. You're the reason for it. The galaxy had watched your story unfold. In the shadows, some factions refused to believe it was real. This idea of a single human soldier breaking down an empire with laughter and childhood drawings. But those who did believe, they were terrified, not of war, of change, because before they could ever speak to Earth, the enemy had to speak to themselves, and they had no shared language for what they'd become. The ones who remained loyal to the old chorus doctrine blamed the emotional breach event, you, essentially, for eroding unity. They used words like psychic contamination and ideological seepage, but others, they brought copies of your stories. Some read them aloud. One delegate from a long silent cast whispered a line from your offhand banter. Maybe clarity isn't peace. Maybe peace is just permission to stop pretending we're okay. It hit like a meteor. They argued for days, not over logistics or reparations, but over what to feel. How do you codify grief you were never allowed to have? How do you handle a generation born into empathy but raised without solitude? Some couldn't handle it. A fleet fragment drifted off entirely, refusing to take part in what they now called the collapse of certainty. But most, they stayed. They stayed because the alternative was going back, and there was no back anymore. You, meanwhile, spend your time not at the center of power but at the edges of it. You live in the ship's and used observation deck now. It has a chair, a plant. The defector visits you often, though you no longer call them that. They have a name now. Yelleth, you didn't name them. They chose it themselves, which is kind of the point. Today, they bring you a gift, a new drawing. More refined this time. Still simple, still earnest. A whole group of stick figures, clustered. Together, eyes wide and ridiculous, they point to one. This is me, they say proudly. You tap another one, far to the side. Is this me? No, they say. You raise an eyebrow. That's you in our version of the story. You laugh. Is it better? Yelleth shrugs. It's different. It ends open. You nod. That's the only way stories ever should. Word of the peace talks filters through the ship like an old radio transmission, fuzzy and soft. No one shouts about it. No parades. Just a gentle, collective exhale. The enemy is still cautious. Earth is still distant. But the first signal is sent. A human voice. Calm. Professional. We are open to discussion. No fireworks. No fanfare. Just willingness. And sometimes, that's all it takes. Some galactic scholars would later describe this moment as the beginning of reconciliation. But you remember it as the day someone finally told their story and didn't sound like anyone else. Because what broke the enemy wasn't cruelty or cleverness. It was the unbearable truth that humanity had already made peace with being broken, and in doing so, made room for others to join them. They never captured another human after you. Not because they couldn't, but because they wouldn't. You become the story they whisper to each other when things begin to fracture. Not a warning, not a hero. Something stranger. A paradox. The soldier, who smiled under interrogation, who laughed during pain simulations, who made the chorus go quiet. It spreads far beyond this ship, beyond their fleets. Entire species who once feared humanity for its resilience now begin to fear something else. The possibility that they might change, too, because the ones who met you, they were never the same, and neither are you. You don't. Return to Earth? Not right away. There are other ships now, other factions, other former enemies drifting like refugee ideas through the dark. Many are asking the same question. What does it mean to be alone? And you're the only one who ever answered it out loud. So they come to you, not to study, but to talk. Sometimes they bring gifts. Sometimes they bring questions they don't even know how to ask. And sometimes they just sit beside you in silence, hoping some fragment of what changed you might catch in the gravity well of their own hearts. You listen. You share stories, not always profound. Sometimes you just describe what a birthday feels like, or the absurdity of Velcro, or why humans sometimes cry during commercials that aren't even sad. And it's enough, because you've learned something, too. That empathy isn't weakness, that solitude, endured long enough, becomes a bridge, and that every time you tell your story, not to convince, not to command, but to simply share, the universe becomes a little less certain and a little more alive. One day, long after the old war, has turned into nothing more than radio static and star maps. A young human officer boards a strange diplomatic vessel. They're nervous, fresh. The suit doesn't quite fit, and as they walk the unfamiliar halls, unsure of how they'll be received, they see something at the end of a corridor, a drawing, faded, with timed out a stick figure under a yellow sun, labeled only us. And below it, in faint script, translated into a dozen languages, the first human they met. The officer smiles, not because they know you, but because now they understand you, and somewhere, far away, aboard a vessel still drifting quietly between galaxies, you sip your coffee, tilt your chair back, and whisper to yourself, good, let them wonder. Because the story was never about victory. It was about invitation. And you were always the first one to hold the door open. So now, let the lights dim just a little more. The hum of the ship, the echo of footsteps through alien corridors, even the laughter that once echoed through sterile walls, faded all into the distance now that you've drifted far, traveler, from a quiet cell in the belly of a ship to the wide, uncharted territory of alien hearts and minds. You didn't conquer. You didn't rebel. You simply remained yourself, unshaken, absurd, and full of stories no one expected to matter. And in doing so, you unraveled something ancient. Maybe it's still out there, that ship, still drifting, still listening. A vessel not of war anymore, but of memory, of wondering. Maybe, right now, someone's curling up in a bunk with your voice playing softly in the dark, trying to understand what it means to be afraid. And keep going anyway. And maybe someone else just found your story and laughed at the first joke. Not because they understood it, but because they wanted to. Sleep now. With that in your chest, let the vacuum of stars cradle you. Let the strange pulse of memory become the rhythm of your breath. That you're not alone. You never were. And neither are they. Good night, traveler that will drift again soon.